And among the topics discussed in last night's State of the Union, working to lift the embargo on Cuba.
The president's push to Congress comes as the highest-level U.S. delegation to visit Cuba in decades met with Cuban representatives in Havana this morning. Joining us now live from Washington, D.C. is Senator Marco Rubio. And thank you, Senator, for joining us. So a lot of news about Cuba being made in the last 24 hours. Let's talk first about the delegation's meeting this morning and your thoughts on what's happening there.
Well, my interest in Cuba is democracy. I want the people of Cuba to have what the people of almost the entire hemisphere have, which is the right to choose their own leaders through a free and fair election. And my problem is that in the deal the president made with the Cuban government, none of that was even, no advances were made in that. The only thing that they agreed to was to release 53 political prisoners, 14 of which had already been released even before that day, one of whom had already been released a year earlier, and 5 of whom have already been rearrested. Since December 17th, the Castro government's already rearrested 5 of them and has arrested 200 additional people. So my interest is democracy, and none of what the president's agreed to here will lead to democracy in Cuba, and certainly the talks today are not about democracy.
Senator, I know you're thinking and considering whether or not to run for president, and you're going to announce that at some point later on this year. If you were elected, would you break off diplomatic relations with Cuba?
Until they make steps toward democracy, absolutely. I think that in Cuba there has to be, I'm ready to take reciprocal steps in our relationship with Cuba. For example, if they allow freedom of the press, we would allow more telecommunications activity. If they allow an organization of independent political parties, we would allow more American travel to Cuba. But those reciprocal steps, they have to be, like I said, they have to be side-by-side reciprocal steps, not one-sided deals that benefit the Cuban government but do nothing to help the Cuban people achieve democracy.
So, Senator, we see the U.S. delegation there. Would you consider going to Cuba?
Well, not at this time. Number one, I think to legitimize the tyranny of their nature is something that I wouldn't want to be a part of. The second, if I ever did decide to go to Cuba under the current regime, it would only be to meet with democracy activists and people that seek freedom. And third, I find it highly doubtful that the Cuban government would allow me to enter anyways.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Senator, let's talk about the speech last night. And the president outlined his economic achievements in that speech. Low unemployment, the stock market is doing good, low gas prices. Do you give him credit for those achievements?
Well, it's not about who gets the credit. I think what it has to do is why aren't people benefiting from it? You know, it is true that we've had some economic growth, and that's good news. The stock market's doing better. That's good news. The problem is, the fundamental problem we face is the vast majority of the benefits of the last couple of years, which, by the way, is not robust enough, but it's better than where we were. The vast majority of the benefits from that growth is not going to the middle class. Millions of middle-class Americans are stuck between stagnant wages, paychecks that aren't going up, and a rising cost of living. And that's what we need to address through a combination of policies that make America the best place in the world to create jobs, giving people the skills they need for those better paying jobs, and helping to lower the cost of student loans, health care, and of course, I believe we need a pro-family tax code that does things like increase the child tax credit, one of the things the president called for last night.
Well, Senator, we touched on this just a bit here with possible run for presidency. Is there anything you want to say about whether or not you will be running for president in 2016?
Well, for me, the decision I have to make is where's the best place for me to serve this country at this time in my life and at this stage in my career? Is it here in the Senate now that we have a majority of Republicans, or is it running for president? And I haven't made that decision yet. It's an important decision. I'm going to take the time to make the right decision, but I also recognize that if I want to run for president, I don't have forever to make that choice, because to run a national campaign, you need the time to get yourself organized.
And Senator, give us an idea of when you'll make a decision?
Well, I don't have a date in mind per se, but I know it has to be at some point in the earlier part of this year, simply because to run a national campaign requires you to build the infrastructure necessary to do that. I'm convinced that we can raise the money and acquire the talent necessary to run such a race, and if we make that decision to go forward.
Well, Senator Marco Rubio joining us live from Washington, D.C. We appreciate your time, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.